everyone.
Hey.
Hello, Asaad.
Hey, how are you?
Good, very good. Hello, Navid.
Hello.
Hello, Bashaer. How are you?
Fine, how are you?
Good, good, good. Ayman is here too. Ayman, do you hear us?
Yeah, just now. Hi.
Hi,
everyone.
So happy to see all your faces.
Likewise. How are you, Fabien?
Aisha, how are you? You're good?
How are you?
Good, good, good. So we are waiting for Yasmin and Fabrice. Fabrice is here with us too. Hello, Fabrice. Do you hear us?
Bonjour.
Hello, guy. So Yasmin should be with us too. And if everyone is here, we will begin. Yeah, Yasmin is here.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good. So everyone is here, so I think we can begin. First of all, I think I need to say that I'm super happy to be with all of you today for concluding the show, The Secrets of Holidays, which was the 8th edition of 2139 Jeddah Hearts. It was a long journey for us. We did it even if it wasn't so easy with the sanitary situation, with the COVID situation, but yeah, we had the show done, and I'm very happy about that. And for this conclusion with the Saudi Art Council, we have decided to put online one conversation about not really the topics of the show, but one of the idea, let's say, that I have in mind when I curate a show. So the proposal here, the title is Thinking Through Hearts, and if I may, I will begin with a little statement, some ideas that I put on in my mind, and I will ask you maybe to react, and we will have, I hope, a fluid conversation with all of you who were really part of the show, and of course, because we have a guest with us. So we have Navid Niknejad, who is the director of the art and culture program at AMAALA, who is one of our sponsors for the show. So we will ask him to jump into the conversation and to maybe ask other question to you, and maybe react to what he will heard about this topic, this perspective. So yeah, thinking through art. What does it mean? The first thing maybe that I would like to underline is that when you think through art, when you say thinking through art, it's different. It's not the same that thinking with art. And this distinction, this difference is for me quite important, because it means that art can't be understood, or it's not how I feel with that. Art is not a tool. Art is not something that you can use. It doesn't have a function. It means that for me, art is not necessarily an object. It's something more than an object. And if I begin with this difference, with this distinction, it's for underlining the fact that art is something alive. Art is something which has developed through history its own characteristic. That's what we call autonomy in the period, the classic, let's say, period of modernity. So for me, and of course there is a, I don't know if I can begin with that, but of course there is a paradox in what I will add now, because I'm not an artist and I speak about as an artist, but of course I'm not. So maybe I'm wrong and you will tell me that it's not how it works for you. But it's true that for me, to create artworks is to think. It's fundamental, and I think that the more I share time with artists, and the more I understand that artworks are really not just a way of expression, but it's a real way of understanding the world. So to create artworks is really to think, and maybe here there is an equivalence. But for me, to mention that we can think through art doesn't mean that art can be reduced to an idea. It means that for me, when I think about the perspective that we think through art, it's not the reduction that we had in history, in art history, with, for example, the conceptual art, you know, this movement of the late 60s. Because conceptual art was really based on what we can call self-consciousness. And with conceptual art, we had the idea that art was nothing material, but a concept. And in this perspective, in this historical perspective, I don't know, you have a lot of artists who embrace these ideas, like Joseph Kosuth, the famous American artist. Art was closed to philosophy. And when I say thinking through art, for me, it's not to say that art should be close to philosophy. On the contrary, for me, thinking through art is a way to say that art can express a relation to our world on another level than words. And of course, it's a little bit, I repeat, but it's a little bit paradoxical to mention this today because it's a conversation, of course. And so we use words for saying that. So if for me, art is not completely related to words, it's just because there is no transparency and there is no continuity between the world and the artwork. So it means that thinking through art is a way to keep what I could call the density of our world. So thinking through art is a way to avoid a strict rationality. I mean, for me, thinking through art is really a way to think in a sensible and physical manner, physical way. So, of course, when you're talking about thinking through art, you explain or you mention that to think through art is to think through emotions and through our body. So it's a shift, it's a change, maybe in our comprehension, understanding of what we call what to think. So to think is not just something intellectual. To think, for me, is something very complex, and it's a complex process that implicates a lot of parameters. I think that rationality has reduced too much the way we understand the way we understand to think. So it's not something necessarily logical, and thinking through art, maybe, and I could let it open like that. Maybe thinking through art is a way to keep vivid a kind of totality in a fragmented world. So that's the ideas that I wanted to share with you for beginning our conversation. I hope I wasn't too long with these first elements. And I mean, I don't know who wants to begin and to just maybe react on that after I have a more specific question for you, but maybe some of you would like to grab and to take the to take the opportunity to react to what I said about this ideas. Asaad, for example, can I begin with you maybe? And I can maybe explain why I'm interested to begin with you, because you're an artist and at the same time you're at the university and in a academic philosophy domain field. So how do you work, and how does it work for you, this relationship, for example, between philosophy and art? For you, is there a strong band, or is it? Can you separate these two fields?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is also a very important topic to discuss. If I think about it now, I think what our comprehension of philosophy usually is that it is words written on paper, or that it only occurs by means of using language. But I think it relates a lot to how our relationship as humans has changed towards meanings and semantics. But because you also mentioned the discussion about modernity, and I think it informs very much my answer, because if we think about the so-called father of modernity, René Descartes, he initiated his project by putting a sort of skepticism, because he was a skeptic of his own senses. But he made a very clever metaphor, in my opinion, about how the construction of ideas actually resembles the construction of a city. So he was the first to find this relationship between matter and mind, even though his conclusion was that matter and mind are two separate entities. But he was interested in investigating the fundamental blocks of reality. But later on, people after him established that, okay, inherent meaning does not exist in the things, but rather we synthesize the meaning and we reproduce the meaning, or we make our own meanings. So if we think about art as an epitome of human culture, as you know, the popular statement, art for its own sake, or art for art's sake, it is devoid from any instrumental ends. But if we think, for example, about a scientist, today a scientist is encouraged to be a critic or to be a skeptic of his own experiments to achieve a certain goal. However, even though this skepticism is viewed as a positive characteristic, when we apply the skeptic attitude associated with modernity in the statement art for its art's sake, this means that we can only be a skeptic of one thing, and that is, what is art? And I think this, for me, informs the basis of thinking through art, but also of using a different form of philosophy. So are they actually linear? Is art a way, as you said, a way of thinking? Then I think philosophy as a discourse as well is very interested in thinking.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was thinking when you were talking about skepticism and doubt, that yeah, maybe there is one element about art that we could underline, is the sense of wonder, which is a little bit different maybe in comparison to philosophy and criticism. Ayman, for example, how do you, between skepticism and a sense of wonder, do you have to choose, or do you think it's the same attitude in a way that you can develop through your installations, through your videos, and through your narrative? Because in your art, it's true that you have a lot of stories to share with us, and language is something that you use, for example.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, so yeah, just to not really complicate, like you know, this is. I feel for me, art is something within the line of a language that can be shared and expressed without actually using words. And for me, like, it's very important. If you actually look back, it's the only sort of like practice that we are still doing until today that was done by like our ancestors, like hundreds of thousands of years ago. So there is something very very interesting about it that we don't really fully grasp. And this is why I always like thought, you know, for me, I either like, even within language itself, if I'm going to use language, in telling stories within my works is usually I'm using it as a medium. I'm using it as something that is not really kind of like literal, but it's more kind of malleable and could be understood in many different ways. So for me, I think about all of these things as just going with a bag of things and just giving it to the receiver, and it's up to the receiver to pick whatever is from that bag without actually knowing or understanding how this what's inside the bag, or what it entails in some sense. I mean, this is I guess my kind of perspective on this.
And when you said that it's something that you can't really fully grasp, it means that it keeps the meaning in, how could I say that, in reserve, you know, it means that the meaning can't really be done or given in a totality, or?
I think there are definitely things that we don't really understand or grasp, like just because we got used to the idea that everything has to be attached to words or like language. For me, like I'm embracing the idea of like within the lines of like animism, of just like actually trusting in the thing itself, where that there's something that suppresses language or like even our understanding or comprehension of the world that could actually be shared and exchanged without knowing exactly what and how and why.
Hmm.
Can I step in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I really like the points that were made about sort of this more visceral side to art creation, whereas this versus logic, you're using a certain level of honesty and trust. You're trusting yourself in a very different way, and you're also trusting other people in a different way. And I think the way viewers might experience the art, the sort of honesty that exists there is something which I think makes it unique. And when it comes to artists connecting with other artists or artists connecting with people, it's about sort of creating this shared common understanding, which is something I think where the sum is greater than the parts. And this is something which I think there's a lot of value in creating that honest communication.
Yeah. Okay. So what is really important in what you said for me is that you immediately jump into something which has to do with subjectivity. When you said, for example, that the artist needs to trust himself or herself, and I was wondering, for example, Fabrice, how do you articulate the relationship between, let's say, subjectivity and objectivity? And if I ask you this question, it's because you work a lot with sciences. You have a lot of sciences background. So do you play with the notions that you take from the objective sciences? Or for you, I mean, it's the same, and it's a culture, and there is no opposition between objectivity and subjectivity.
I don't know if there. Thank you. It's very nice to see all you, because I didn't meet anybody for the show, and it's a pleasure to speak about my way of thinking, but in the art, because I came from mathematics at first, and I studied mathematics, quantique and relativity, and I was very upset to understand what I studied, and the only way to understand what I studied is to make art. And when I do art and do image, I can understand what I wanted to say, and one by one, step by step, I began to make to draw, to understand, to make some image, to make some between image and language, between image and sign, and all these things all together began art things of art field. And I was sure until the beginning that we need to have a lot of art things to understand the world. And at each time when you have one new thing, the word change. It's like a baby. When a baby came, all the word change. And I think it's very important. It's like it's a very quantic relation with the word. Every time when you have a new way, a new things to see, you can change the word, and every time the new art piece, it's just, another way. The new word, the new invention, it's another way to change the word. I think it's perhaps it's you understand what I say? I don't know.
But it means that it's a question of perception for you. A new way to deal with the world is the production of a new world.
Yes, it's when you do art, you do a new word. Every time you rebuild the word every time, and it's why I'm very proud, and I'm very sure that I trust in the art, because with art we can change the world probably, and it's like that. Perhaps I'm a silly guy, but but it's a way to work, and it's I have a lot of things to say about that. It's nice to see every time that when you do an art piece, and I do some drawings, and perhaps all together, you saw my painting about the oils and the invention of the oils or something like that, and I was sure that when I began a drawing, I want to show a way to a new behavior, and every time I can understand that there is a lot of possibility for artists to do art. You can make art, painting, drawings, video. You can make immersion something, or some action, some power of material, and every time it's a new well-being. And one step by step, I try to be in the good way to do the best of art every time. You have to feel every time the new way to do art, and it's not only sensation. It's all the possibility, all the sensitive possibility of the body. I'm sure of that.
So it's not different from the intellectual part. I mean, for you, it's merged, it's mixed. It's a mix.
It's a mix. Always like that. When you have an image, you feel something. It's always like that. It's more about osmosis. I don't know if it's a mood. It's more a sponge. An artist is a sponge. It's more a sponge.
Yasmin, how does it work for you? Because for you, the visual part, the form is really important, but it's not only decorative. I mean, you must be very close to what Fabrice said when he was thinking about enlarging the perception. How does it work for you?
For me, it's more, I lean more into the subjective aspect of it. I use art to negotiate kindly with issues I have regarding birth and death, that I exist, I'm making my mark. State of play between harmony and turbulences, usually mostly visual forms. But yeah, I do make judgments according to my cognitive tendencies, optical dialogues that rely heavily on sensations, and I'm motivated as a participant alongside with other forms of nature. I mean, you get caterpillar trails, birds with mating, astonishing mating dances, and but then again, I'm a conscious human. I have the rational and irrational forms. But when I see the ancestors, how they were making their marks, it was like there was a need for it. It was a very crude, natural need to kind of feel alive somehow. So and now in the modern era, we tend to want to control our understanding by generalization, categorization, classifying art movements as what you said about conceptual art. It tends to be a thought, an idea, rather than you don't need to even be in front of the artwork to experience it. It's like a one-liner. Like I feel my pieces are meant to be seen and experienced, standing in front of it, like the sculpture, going around it closer and further. Even when I'm making art, I'm dealing with the materials, with my senses, and yes, they're limited, but it makes me feel like that I exist somehow. And it's very, there's an innocent aspect of it. Of course, with the art world, and somehow ego kind of drives us to to create things, but I try to detach myself from it and go into the essence of why am I doing this. And as Asaad mentioned, art for art's sake, that's how it always starts with me. And I mean, it's so hard to grasp the vastness of reality through linguistic forms of communication. That's where the subconscious and imagination somehow bridges between the material, tangible reality with the metaphysical one. And it's a continuous, ever changing dialogue with oneself. And yeah, I mean, rather than a set of strategies, like how it happens with conceptual art.
But would you say, for example, that the vocabulary you create with your sculptures, for example, are a substitute to the language, which is that is more related to rationality? Or for you, it doesn't make sense, and no, because you don't use words. You mean you use colors, you use forms as your vocabulary. But for you, what's the relationship that you have as an artist with language, for example, words, for example?
I mean, I cannot escape my fascination with art theory. Even when I read philosophy, it's I can't detach myself from it. It inspires me to push. We want to communicate, and that's why language was created. But then again, it limits us from the blur. Everything is blurry, and it comforts us sometimes when we compartmentalize ideas. So I would use language for description, and then I have to kind of detach myself from it. I mean, like when you see outsider artists, I don't know why they're called outsider artists, but they're so true and so transparent, like with the essence of art, and you don't see them theorizing much with their work. But then again, we cannot disregard the diversity of our cognitive states. That's why we have schools of thoughts. We have decade after decade, we keep just changing. The 20th century itself has given us so much with art schools, and it's useful to learn from it, to classify it, to see the reactions and adapting of these masters. But then again, language, it's still human created. There is so much more than this, and it just keeps, life came before us and continue after us, and we're just like, we make a dent with our mark making, and yeah. So.
Mm-hmm. And you feel that it's your artwork, for example, the forms that you use are something more synthetic in a way, like a synthesis of a totality, and where language is something which may separate things?
When it comes to art making itself, language blurs. I become in a state of flow, and what helps me is experience. Repetition with the drawing. Of course, I have references from architecture, nature, illustrations that. Experience and wisdom helps me, but then again, language has to be archived aside. I'm having this choreography with the material they're making, yeah, I guess it's more like a ritual. It becomes spiritual, having endless languages in one. And when you play between the conscious mark making, because you need to know when to stop, but then again, you have the subconscious and the imagination playing along, and the wonderment of a child is so true, and it serves me more than anything else. So language becomes blurry, but after you finalize the piece according to the borders of the canvas and limitations of colors, you step back and you want to make sense of it. This is the human nature to kind of theorize things, and we cannot escape that. But then again, you go back to the play, to the state of play again, and on and on. And there is no way to say what art is. It is everything, and with all of its diversity, I guess. So.
Yeah. Qamar, sorry, I didn't introduce you at the beginning, but I didn't saw you. What do you think? What is your perspective? Do you recognize, for example, yourself when Yasmin is speaking about her child spirit? Do you think you have, for example, this child spirit? You try to keep it, and it has to do with something which is different from sciences, rationality, language, seriousness, or for you it's more, as we said before, merged and mixed?
Definitely. I mean, for me, the whole cultural identity and dealing with it as a child, and I had to kind of understand what it meant. And throughout the years, I tried to kind of figure it out, and what does this mean? What does identity mean? And I just try to find answers behind them. And this is what I keep on doing. It's kind of like asking questions to myself to kind of understand the communication between the thing that is material and the thing that is like the happening, or like the thing that's not actually physical, the metaphysical, like Yasmin said. And I'm always trying to understand the communication between them. And when I actually expose such a theory to the audience and kind of make them part of it and try to understand kind of what it feels and the emotions behind it. For me, like in filmmaking and making art itself, I think every all of it is art. Like each form comes differently, you know. In filmmaking, there's like this whole team. They're like bees, you know. They're like a whole set of bees, you know. And it feels kind of like you're kind of completing something together, you know. But somewhere in the art world, it feels like you're kind of on this journey alone, but you cross paths, you know. And I think this is how I kind of try to understand the communication. There's this difference that I find in art is just that it's never ending. It's a never ending process. You always feel like okay, so what is this thing that I'm experimenting with? I've always felt like, in filmmaking, no, I have to have everything that's fully ready and prepared, and because I'm working with a team. But in the art world, it's kind of like the art is speaking to you. It's kind of like there is no fine line that makes it. It's not idea. It's not constrained in an idea, like you said. You cannot really explain it. You cannot really put it in words. You can't put a box in it, because it's endless. It keeps on going and it keeps on growing. And I think this is why I feel like I'm always trying to understand these kind of communication between like identity and my childhood. Yeah, so
yeah, and what you said, I mean, the difference that you made between the project and the process, for me, is super important, because it's true that, for example, you were speaking about film or cinema. It's true that in the film industry, the script is super important, and you need always to project yourself in what you will do. But it's true that in art, maybe you have more freedom with that, and you can, for example, have a process which is transforming always in itself, and every step will change in a way. It will change the object and the result. I mean, it's not just you go to a point A from a point A to a point B, but I mean the journey in itself is part of what you will engage for producing your artwork.
Yes. And for me, like they both, the audience existence in the matter is very important, both for in the art world and video art and in the filmmaking world. The audience is a huge part of the work to be completed or to actually be seen or visible. And the point is that it's just, it feels like in there is the result in that you reach with art is kind of you cannot plan it or put it in schedules and put it in lines. No, you just have to go with it, because in the end it somehow it controls you. You don't control it, you know, it ends up controlling you. And it's beautiful. It's not in a bad way. It's actually really beautiful. You just have to lead with it and believe in it so much, because this is what makes it happen. This is what makes it grow. And yeah,
it's not just a way to lose yourself, because you learn from for the fact that you reshape your own identity in each work in a way.
Yes, definitely.
Bashaer, what's your point of view about this this topic, this idea that art is really a way of thinking, especially because your last work were a little bit related to what we the one who is usually understood as the Pope of conceptual art, Marcel Duchamp. For me, there is a false understanding of the ready-made of Marcel Duchamp, and this false understanding is to reduce the ready-made to the concept, to lose the fact that it's an object and it's something more than an object. It's a reality in a way. So how do you see this relationship to Marcel Duchamp, for example, to the ready-made, and what does it mean for you to think through art?
I think thinking through art for me is trying to explore myself in my idea and the relationship between me and the material itself. When I see for the first time any object in front of me, I always feel there's a connection, or there's a hidden conversation between me and the material. And that take me to the part of research or search for the meaning or the subject, or why do I feel connected to this kind of material. And then when I search for anything, for example, for the squeezer, for example, and I see what's the beneficial of the machine, it's always moving. So I like to move a lot. It's always changing. There's no stability, and you have to move, or you have to think a lot. I think I always feel like I want to do art and understand myself in my relationship with the world, and connect between my ideas and the material itself. That's how I feel thinking through art. I always feel like I want to go outside and discover myself, and how I connect with everything around me, starting from my environment, which is my home. And when I see, for example, a tree inside of my home, I always see this tree every single day. So it becomes something in my memory. And then when I make art, for example, I always see this kind of tree in my art, for example. And this kind of tree, I see it outside of my home. It's something different. So I think that's how I engage with ready-made materials, maybe, or the things around me.
Because for you, a ready-made is not just an object, it's something which is charged with a lot of elements from your life and from your daily life, let's say.
Yes, exactly. For example, what can I call it? The broom that I used in most of my artwork. I see it part of my my pieces, for example. So everything around me, the place, it becomes just one piece with me. So it becomes one element, I think. And that's how I engage with the materials around me.
Aisha, I think when Bashaer is speaking about metamorphosis, I was thinking immediately about your work, because the work that you propose for The Secrets of Early Dates is a journey in a way, and this journey is really the expression of your metamorphosis. So how do you relate to this idea of process and of something very incarnated?
For me, it's normally very personal. Like, so far, my art is very personal. Even from the beginning, like starting off when I was a student, because of the struggles I've been through in life. So most of my work was me expressing myself, my feelings, and it's another way of speaking to people, you know, and connecting with people. And I feel like you don't have to be literal. Like, you can express yourself how you want, and the viewers connect in a different way. You know, everyone has their own way of connecting to the work itself. I mean, they don't necessarily have to connect exactly the way you've put it out. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's more like thinking through art and speaking, you know, speaking through art.
In terms of speaking, in the artwork that we exposed, you present a deconstruction of language.
Yeah.
Can you maybe be a little bit more explicit about this process and why you wanted finally to use language, to use words, but words which become something fragmented?
Yeah. So basically, it starts off as a whole phrase, and then it starts to deteriorate. Like it falls apart as, you know, you move per piece. That was because, well, language I chose because that's my mother tongue, and that's what that was the language I spoke with, only with my mom. See, at home we speak in English with everyone else, but with my mom, that was the language I used. And, you know, it was a tribute to her and expressing the, you know, acceptance of loss and everything. So that was one of the reasons I used the language, and the fact that it was deconstructing through each of the pieces was because, like, life, you know, we all have to leave, right? We all have to die at some point. So that was pretty much, you know, my way of expressing loss and acceptance, but acceptance of losing someone or something. So for me, it was losing my mom. So, which is why it deconstructed. And at the end, the only word that was not deconstructed was the word mother, because that itself, you know, she's gone, but her memories are what, you know, what I live with. So yeah, that's.
But can we say that for you, words weren't enough in a way, and you wanted to have something more material?
Yeah, I think sort of. I mean, words are really never enough to express, you know. I think there's always different ways to express your feelings. So from my culture, like cultural background, like what I'm thinking about my new piece, my upcoming, like what I want to create, there's certain things in my culture that you're not allowed to talk about, and you know, it's shameful to talk about it. So I mean, firstly, I don't have like this whole, you know, I don't really care about culture, but at the same time, you know, society and culture, you know, it's just, we have to accept it. So with that, I guess I'm thinking like art is something so amazing that we can, you know, we can talk about anything through it. So yeah, that's my way of, you know, fighting with my culture. So yeah, that's
Navid, what do you think about whole that we heard now? Of course, I don't want you to synthesize. It will be a little bit complicated, but yeah, for you to be to work with some artists is important because it's a way to change and to change your point of view and your relationship to reality and to the world, for example, with AMAALA?
Yes, precisely. You know, at AMAALA, for us, art, you know, the key values of AMAALA are centered around philanthropy, around transformation, and around value generation. And one of the key conduits through which we want to generate value is through engaging with the broader community. And one part of that broader community, which we think is very exciting and very inspiring, is the arts community. And for us, you know, our objective as a key player in Saudi Arabia, you know, being part of Vision 2030, being a Giga project, is to really generate an impact in Saudi, a real impact. And the question we ask ourselves is, what can we do to help artists to create those bonds and those connections that they need in order to create something which is of value? You know, Fabrice mentioned, you know, art can change the world. Qamar mentioned that there are certain crossroads that happen in terms of like these interlinkages. And Aisha just now mentioned that, you know, that it's a form of communication, not just thinking, but communication. So the question that we ask is, you know, what role does this bonding and bridging play between these nodes of thought, these different people we're seeing here on the screen today? How can those nodes be connected together to create something which is really important? I mean, this conversation, this panel is that actually happening, right? It's those nodes coming together, sharing something, perhaps creating some knowledge that wasn't there before, or a new perspective. And I think this is what we try to, you know, facilitate at AMAALA, is to create those platforms for those nodes to come together and for those bonds between those thoughts and those creative processes to come together. So for us, you know, we're just very happy to hear from artists and to be, you know, we're a humble entrant into this world, and we're just happy to hear the ideas and thoughts from various artists of how this truth and this honesty that exists in that, let's say, non-logical, more visceral perspective, the more emotional, the more visceral perspective. I think when we're able to connect that notion between various parties, bring it all together, that's when you can create this sort of transformation. And what we're happy to do is to hear from artists, to see what their thoughts are on how we can come together and what role we can play to create real value, not just to, you know, there's various means by which we can do that, you know, knowledge generation, exchanging ideas, exposure platforms. I think all of these things are part of our partnership with 2139 and SAC. But what we really want is to hear from artists what their ideas are on how we can come together and create something which is going to change the world, as Fabrice said. So happy to hear people's ideas and thoughts in that vein.
It's true that I could say that in a way we are, I mean, modernity is finished. So we could say that there is no new territory. We won't discover a new frontier, but at the same time, there is a possibility to produce new connection. And I mean, maybe the artists are really the ones who can really try to connect things together, and especially things that in a way rationality has separate, because in the huge movement of modernity, there was this idea about how to know the world, and how could we know the world? We could know the world when we separate it. But now I think we are in another story. And the story is not to disconnect things and classify things, but on the contrary, to bring things together and to create new relationship. And you were speaking about Fabrice. It's true that when you see Fabrice painting in The Secrets of Holidays, you see how he tried to connect several histories which are the same in a way, tectonic geochronology, the sun history, even the man was present in his chronology. And it's true that with his paintings, he really figure how to create new bounds between things.
Well, you've also done the same thing, Fabien, in your role as curator. You've created this constellation, for lack of a better word, between all these artists, and basically selecting these various artists with coming from different backgrounds and different media, but to bring them together and sort of create something which is much more than the sum of its parts, in the common threads and the connections that are being built between the works and between the artists, which I think is also needs to be mentioned as well.
Thank you. Maybe that's the conclusion. I don't know if someone wants to add something, but yeah. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for all these ideas that we tried to put together. And I was really happy to see all your faces. This is, I can say it's really friends' faces. So I hope we will find ways to see you and to continue this discussion in another context. Thank you to all. I would like, of course, to thank the Saudi Art Council for not just this panel, but all the projects that I developed during the last year. And I was so pleased by this experience that I have no words. I'm without words for that. So thank you for everyone, and see you soon.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.